Okay, hey Vlad, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. I'm so excited to be chatting about secrets management, and I'm glad to have you on here. Maybe actually stop for a second and introduce yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, my name is Vlad. I'm really excited to be on this podcast. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of InPhysical, and we are an open source secret management platform for developers. I mean, we're going to talk more about secret management today, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not just a platform. Like, I think you guys are probably the successors of Terraform Vault. I know you have a lot. I mean, since they changed the license, you had a lot of influx of a lot of great customers. So,
Yeah,
kudos and yeah,
yeah. We are, right now, Invisible started as an open source project, but right now we are one of the maybe like top 10, 15 open source security projects on GitHub, like out of all the projects out there. And we support companies, from Fortune 500 companies to, banks and governments and some of the fastest growing AI startups right now. So yeah.
awesome. A lot of responsibility. Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess maybe that's what is even like secrets manager? Like what is explain it like I'm 5 year old. Like what is it?
Yeah. Awesome. Or maybe even it's better. Like, what is the problem that secret
Let's
managers
do
are
that.
solving,
Yeah.
right? So, traditionally, as software was getting more advanced, and as developers and enterprises were getting more complicated infrastructure, um, different parts of infrastructure needed to connect to one another, or it's developers need to connect to the database, or database needs to connect to the applications or some servers and so on. Everything has to be interconnected, but everything is basically a different piece. So you need to find a way for that. And so there are different types of secrets that you can actually have. Whether it's static or dynamic, or API keys, or access tokens, or certificates, or whatever it is. But ultimately, secret management solutions, they help developers organize these secrets in a secure manner. So, whoever you are, whether you are a human or a machine, you are able to access these secrets in any environment that you actually need them to be. Um, and it makes your life significantly easier, and you don't need to think about any security, considerations as much.
Yeah. I mean, like I have security background. I'm sold on all of that. But like, why not just use KMS or like any of those like whatever comes with a platform? Just
Yeah. So there are a lot of different approaches, right? Like some companies, they actually decide, like they kind of like want to roll it on their own, and they have this KMS, and they, like they do everything themselves. The problem with that is that, like sure, if all you want is a secure secret storage, then it's actually very easy to build. The problem with that is, okay, but like what do you do in your Kubernetes clusters, and how do you automatically redeploy them based on secret changes? Or what do you do in your CI/CD pipelines? You're using Jenkins, or I don't know, GitHub Actions, for example, right? Like how do you correctly provision secrets there? How do you, just in general, whether you're doing human secret management or machine secret management, how do you do access controls correctly? And how do you, for example, provision access temporarily, or like, for example, for some
yeah.
developers, they need just-in-time access to a certain environment. So these are all the things that become very hard if you just kind of like roll it on your own. Um, and there's lots of other examples of that. Like, for example, how do you do local secret management, and how do you make sure that developers onboard very easily on their first day, they have the correct
Yeah.
environment that they can immediately check out. So there's lots of use cases like that that actually even though the problem space might seem pretty simple on the front page, it's like an iceberg, and there's kind of like so much more under the water.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, just like as you were talking, I was thinking about it, and I have like PTSD from like going through like 7 GitHub repositories, updating a token, and yeah, for each one of them, and obviously forgetting one or two. So yeah, even just from that is actually okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess I just described like my memory of just doing that, like because I think probably there are companies or there are stages of products that are probably too early to adopt a secrets manager, or maybe not. Maybe it's kind of like from the beginning. When do usually people go down that path? Do you think?
Yeah. So we have, a few different customers segments, right? So sometimes very early startups, and it's usually, like they have CTOs who are very, like they care a lot about security, and then they adopt it from day zero. I think it very much also depends on what is the industry that they are operating in, right? If they're in finance or healthcare or some kind of like more regulated industry, then they care about it much more. At some point, when the company is becoming more advanced, let's say they're like Series B plus, then they actually like what they definitely care about security. I mean, if they are in finance, of course they care about security, right? But imagine they're in travel, yeah, they care about security, and not to the same extent. But what they care about is operational efficiency, and their infrastructure, by that point is actually becoming so advanced. Is like they kind of like don't even know like what they are, and oftentimes when we talk to them, they're not sure how many secrets they have or where they are or who has access to them and so on. And then in physical makes life so much easier for them. And then there is kind of like a third set of customers that are significantly larger. Let's say your typical Fortune 500 companies or governments, and they actually have very particular opinions about how they want their secrets to be managed, and they care a lot about the security aspect of it and not just the efficiency aspect.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I think so. Okay, it sounds to me, if I'm like echoing back what you said. So first of all, it actually makes, it saves me from going to those 7 GitHub repositories and like opting all of them. So actually
Yeah,
makes my life easier. But also, I have this like one dashboard where I know that this secret is stale. It's been around for 5 years.
yeah,
Seven generations of engineers have had access to it on their
yeah.
kind of like first onboarding day. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it's basically like two different benefits. One of them is operational efficiency, and another one is kind of like improved security posture. So and different companies want different things. Some of them want both, but sometimes it's only one of the two.
Okay, and you just mentioned it, and I repeated that, kind of like an engineer just using it on the first day or getting access. So I guess maybe you can walk me through how you're thinking about secrets in different environments. Like production,
Yeah.
I'm sure is like a very specific thing, and whether engineer on the first day getting access to SendGrid or Twilio or
Yeah.
something.
No, yeah, definitely. And how we how we structure it in physical is we have three different buckets of secret management, right? So at first you have the local development environments, right? And this starts from an engineer actually onboarding onto the company, right? So on their first day, how do we make sure that they immediately have access to the right environment? So imagine they're being added to Okta, then they're automatically being provisioned to in physical. They inherit the right set of controls, and then they can immediately, within 15 minutes, actually check out the environment and start writing code and committing to that, right? And there is lots of different stuff that we do in local development environment that also makes sure that secrets don't stay on the local machines. And like when the application is exited, all the secrets are also wiped out. Or how do we make sure that developers don't accidentally hard code secrets? And we basically prevent them from accidentally leaking them to Git and so on. We will block their commits and we will prompt them to add those to in physical. And this is kind of like on the development side. The next bucket is the staging and testing and QA environments. And there's a lot of considerations of what you actually want to do here, right? But I think what's the most important here is a set of integrations. And oftentimes throughout the company lifecycle, the tech stack for these environments actually changes quite a bit. And they want to choose a platform that supports most of these integrations. And if they actually switch from Jenkins to something else in a few years, then they will not to change their secret management underlying infrastructure. And the last part, which is the most sensitive, right? And I think that's what people care about the most, is the production environment. And how do they manage secrets in their Kubernetes clusters or in ECS environments, or perhaps they have a multi-cloud use case, right? And how do they orchestrate secrets in between those? Or they have something on-prem. There's lots of considerations, but we split it in three buckets, yeah.
But I think about it, and I agree. Like production secrets are the most important. Not trying to diminish that, but actually, if you have, like an open AI token, that you share across engineer, or like not share, maybe like generate for an engineer like as they join, or even like for the staging environment, and somehow engineers have access to it, that can actually have serious implications for the company. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Absolutely. Yeah.
all secrets are important, I think, like even in dev, and it's actually, and I guess part of what you do, you have all the secrets, so you kind of like, you probably scan all the secrets, to make sure that they don't get into Git. I think you mentioned something around that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We provide automatic secret scanning on a few different levels, starting from, ultimately, like this goes back to the trend of security shift left. And, are you familiar with it? Or just in general, what it is, right, is traditionally security has been very centered around the security team.
Hmm.
But, as the infrastructure is becoming more advanced and as there's more developers in the company, it's actually becoming very hard to manage at the end. And then the security team is kind of like this watchguard that like can't control everything. So a lot of tools and different organizations, they move towards the direction of actually enabling developers to follow the security practices and code securely and operate securely, and so on. So like the secret scanning part is one of that, right? So first of all, how can you prevent this from happening on the level of developers? It's not about how you actually catch it, but how do you make sure that it doesn't happen, so you never need to catch it, and if you need to catch it, then the security team is there. But how do you minimize these risks? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think this is like a great primer of kind of like why, why it exists, why should people adopt it, when should people adopt it. I mean, we talked about the secret scanning. I remember like you told me about one other cool thing that is done in this world nowadays, which is dynamic generation of secrets, or maybe like live rotation. Can you maybe explain what that means, and
Yeah,
why
yeah,
it even matters as well?
yeah. So there is a few different ways of how it's possible to do this kind of secret rotation. First of all, there is something called secret rotation, right? And within physical, we'll let you do it for a number of different databases and services, like for example, Twilio or SendGrid. You can actually automatically rotate your access tokens or API keys on a certain schedule. Um, these tokens still remain static, right? So imagine if you have me as one developer and Tom as another one, we will actually still be using the same access token, but it will be rotated every, let's say, 5 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but what you can do, even further than that, you can go one step further and you can generate your secrets dynamically. And in that case, imagine you have a Postgres access token, then me and Tom actually have a different version of this token. And so what's happening is that there are like a number of security policies that you can specify, with regards to what people are able to access or how long they have this access for and so on. But every client, and it's not just for the users, right, but also for the machines, they have their own unique version of this access token that's only valid for either a certain number of requests or a certain period of time. And then it's being automatically revoked, and you need to get kind of like a new token to actually be able to operate it. And so why it's cool is that even if the attacker actually somehow gets the token, right, so that gives them access to the database, it's only going to be valid for the next, like sometimes few seconds. So they will not be able to do much with it because it's going to be kind of like automatically revoked. So it basically creates this moving target for attackers, and they aren't actually able to, uh, you know, find the vulnerabilities in the
Yeah.
system.
Okay. And I think also, I mean, I don't know if this is even a thing, but you can actually probably provision tokens that are very, very tight and limited based on the
Yeah,
use case. So even if it leaks, it's probably as useful. And I guess
yeah,
also, sorry, I'm just like running in my head like all the possibilities. So like even, I, I guess you can even do anomaly detection, right? Because usually a token only does 10
yeah.
queries, and now this one is doing 200. Bam, something's bad. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. And we do some of those things. We have the functionality called smart security alerts,
oh,
basically notifying people about what's happening in their systems.
yeah, that's cool. And I think, yeah, secrets. I mean, I know like we read it all over the news all the time, like secrets leak, and bad things happen, whether it's like runaway bills or data going to places it
Yeah,
shouldn't go.
Yeah, I think when the secret leak happens, of course, it depends on the company, right? But the bill is usually the smallest of the concerns. I think the biggest of the concerns is like like some large healthcare company needing to
No, no,
pay
for
like
sure. Yeah,
huge fines and its reputational loss and so on.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. I can't even imagine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds horrific. Okay, and I guess okay. So I think we now have a good understanding of what secrets management is. Again, like how to onboard, how to use it, all of that. Some cool stuff that it enables. You know, what's why is this? Why are we even talking about secrets manager? Like, what's not solved? Why? Yeah. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so like secret management is a fairly established industry, and there are some solutions that have been throughout the years, from the earliest Oracle like days, up until now. But I think what we at InPhysical point out is that while okay, secret managers exist, but then why do companies like Mercedes-Benz or AstraZeneca, like they still kind of like have these secret leaks and security breaches that are centered around secret leaks. So why what is not solved? And in fact, if you look at just kind of like all companies out there, then you see that around half of all security breaches happens because of leaked secret or like mismanaged secrets. So what's the problem? And with in physical, what we do about that, or kind of like our point of view of why it's happening, is that it's actually because a lot of secret management products are so complex to use um, that they're kind of like actively hostile to developers. It's like no one can even know like how all these different security
Yeah.
policies work with each other and how they're overlaid or not. And then what's end up happening is that like no one actually knows how this thing works. And so we typically tell companies is like, yes, like you can set up the most secure secret manager out there, but if your developers don't use it and they don't know how to use it and they need to get these certifications to even do like the simplest thing there, then you are actually not solving the problem, but it's even worse because you think you are solving it, and then you one day end up with a security breach. Um, so yeah, and what we do about it, right, is we actually focus much more on developers. So it goes back to the security shift left phenomenon, where like we actually provide developers with the right tools to either, for example, request just-in-time access for perhaps they're participating in pre-deployment. They can request access directly from InPhysical. The right administrator is notified for a particular environment. They can approve it or deny it for the next 2 hours, right? As soon as the 2 hour period is gone, then all the secrets are automatically rotated and all the access is revoked. They don't have access to anything else. And there's a lot of these workflows for developers that we actually enable and make it very simple for them to use in physical. And yeah.
Okay, so it's actually I think a lot of the magic here as well is kind of like the integrations with all of those different services, so you can have that automatic rotation. Because I mean, it's kind of like you can have the best lock in the world, but if you don't close the door and lock it, like it's useless. Kind of like what
Yeah.
you said earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It,
no, so
it's
it's
like you
yeah,
like you bought this like best lock in the world and it's like so advanced, but you forgot to attach it. And because like
yeah,
you're really not using it.
yeah,
Uh,
and maybe yeah. I mean, it's because it's so complex. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess okay, and how is there actually a spec for like integrating with like a secrets manager? So kind of like an easy way for let's say Svix wants to add like an easy way to just like connect with your rotation. Is that this is like a common pattern that people use?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like
absolutely. I mean, in physical is ultimately still an ops product, right? So everything is available through API, and our API is public, and you can get any endpoints and actually integrate with us. So there are a number of different integrations of how people go around it. Some, if you want the integration to be kind of like just come directly from physical, then well, we can either develop it together, or well, physical is actually open source, so any developer can submit a PR, and our team will review it. Yeah, so
okay, so to my question is this: it's open. Like your magic has been that it's like it's open source, so just you have all of those integrations because I'm gonna scratch my own itch. I'm gonna add the services that I use.
and this happens all the time, right? So a lot of companies, and this goes to, like I'm talking about some pretty large companies. Sometimes they're like, oh, I need this integration, and they just contribute it, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
even tell us sometimes about it, and then we get a PR, and they're like, could you please review? Um, so yeah, and that's all the time, and this has been incredibly helpful. I mean, our open source community, I think it's been, a huge part of our success until now, because they kind of, like the community kind of tells us what is the most useful version of the product that they can get, and they either request these particular integrations, or sometimes they write those themselves.
Okay. And I think that actually makes, so like part of what you talked about was operational, success and operational ease of use. And I think that's make open source makes a lot of sense, right? Because otherwise you won't have all of these contributions, people just like building that long tail of integrations that you're never going to get around to building, no matter how large you are, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like exactly what you were saying, the long tail of integrations, and yeah, we were able to get it
Okay.
very fast.
Cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else about secrets? I mean, I know there's a ton. We can talk for hours more about everything secrets manager, but is there anything about the topics that we talked about today that you want to add that we haven't covered?
I think we covered probably a good amount. I mean, it's just the start, as you said, because there is so much more. Yeah, with regards to different considerations, like how you self-host things or whatnot. But yeah, there is lots and lots of other topics to talk about. But I think we covered a good amount.
Okay, well, Vlad, thank you so much. Always great to chat, and I learned actually quite a few things today. So awesome to
Yeah,
hear.
awesome, great chatting to you.